Why do you think we need channel deepening?
Well, we don't need channel deepening. It's very clear we don't need channel deepening. The port is going gangbusters now. It's been growing at about 8 to 10% every year for the last 10 years. And even though the farmers have been told that we need channel deepening to get our exports out, we don't. Almost 40% of our export containers are empty. We're exporting air out of the Port of Melbourne. And what's growing is our imports, and a lot of people are very worried about that because Australian jobs are being lost and we're importing more and more. So perhaps the only people that think we need channel deepening is the Port of Melbourne Corporation. I don't think the people of Victoria think it.
A state matter, this isn't just about Victoria. Port Phillip Bay is internationally significant. Here's the Ramsar wetland area around Swan Bay. Birds from all over the world go there. They need that, and they need the west coast of the upper bay in order to fulfil their migration patterns right around the world. Now, that's an international obligation of the Commonwealth. Now, here is where the proposed toxic spoil ground is planned for. Nearly 600 hectares. 60 times the footprint of the Nwinji dump that was rejected by the good efforts of the Sunraysia Council and the Mildura people. We need some efforts from our local councils here too. We can't have a toxic dump here. If we do, we're likely to spoil the bay forever. Now, the real problem with the Yarra sediment being uncovered and taken in a dredge to here and dumped is that we just don't know what's going to happen. So if it's going to be done at all, spend another $1 billion and do it properly.
Correct, because once they hit Melbourne, there's been heaps of rubbish and stuff dumped in Melbourne years and years ago, and once they dredged it down, all the toxic waste is going to spread all around the bay, and it's not going to be swimmable. And we usually make stuff with the sand on the bay and play in the water, and I can't do that when all the toxic waste is in the water.
I'm very worried about the amount of money that your government is prepared to spend dredging the bay. My daughter recently died by being hit by a train, and I went up to Parliament and was told that they're spending over 590 million dredging the bay, and yet there's only something like 200 million for making the railways safe. There are too many people being killed. There was 3 incidents last week. I ask the people of Australia, stand up, be counted, and stop the dredging. Tell them you need the money paid into your infrastructure to make your citizens safe.
Oh look, I wouldn't. It's hard to know where to start. It's the economic argument for it is totally flawed. The supposed social benefits are just rubbish, and environmentally it's going to be a total disaster. It sort of boils down to basic environmental vandalism.
Think about the toxic dump in the bay.
Well, channel deepening involves the digging up of over 3 million tonnes of highly contaminated sediments around the Yarra mouth. And that is absolutely criminal and a huge public health risk and a long-term public health risk. The risks include short-term impacts with a huge plume heading right over the inner city beaches and potentially landing on those inner city beaches, making them unsafe to swim in. And then we're looking at long-term impacts, particularly impacts on people's fertility, children's intellectual development, and a long-term increased cancer burden for the people that come into contact with these toxins.
So what sort of stuff is in it?
Oh, there are toxins, you name it. There are hundreds of them. There are heavy metals, lead, mercury, arsenic, zinc. The list goes on, and then particularly organic pesticides, DDT, dioxin, PCBs, really nasty organic pesticides and toxins that impact on intellectual development, fertility, and are known cancer-causing agents.
So what about cyanide? There's even cyanide in the sediments, we've been told.
Yes, you name it, it's there.
So what
Bay Play Adventure Tours. We're based down here in Portsea on the Mornington Peninsula. We run an adventure activity business down here. We've been operating on the peninsula for 8 years and we've just relocated down to Portsea. As you can see behind me, we have a big shop here and lots going on, lots of school groups and educational groups around at the moment, being February and March, with lots of school camps. We run marine education programs for thousands of students every year, incorporating snorkeling, sea kayaking, scuba diving, and unfortunately due to the fact that we've got the dredge right on our doorstep here in Rosebud right now, it's affecting everybody in terms of what we can and can't do in the bay.
I've just been asked about sea level rise. Well, sea level rise is happening because of global warming, but it's also going to happen because of channel deepening. Because if ever the entrance to the bay was opened up, as the Port of Melbourne Corporation want to, by removing 500,000 cubic metres of rock from the entrance, more water is going to flow in and out of the bay on every tide. And that's going to mean that higher tides are going to be higher in the bay, possibly by 2 or 3 centimetres, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when 2 or 3 centimetres of water rises in height, it spreads up to 2 to 3 metres horizontally on land, and that means a lot more inundation of our beaches and a lot more inundation of our flat areas around the bay, and there's heaps of flat areas around the bay and heaps of very important infrastructure around the bay that's going to be impacted by it. When you add a storm surge on top of that and a king tide, we're possibly going to have lots of damage to very important infrastructure and very important coastal wetlands around the bay.
An economist mentioned to me the other day that if we invested $1 billion today over 30 years, that we'd be much better off than actually doing the dredging with no risk to the bay. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, well, I think I've seen that calculation too, that we might get 3.5% return on this project over 30 years, and that's if nothing goes wrong. But if we just stuck it in the bank, we'd get 7% and absolutely no damage to our beautiful bay.
So yeah, not only is it really disappointing for us down here on the southern end of the bay, but also we operate a lot of educational groups up on the top end, up on at the Yarra River, and also at Ricketts Point Marine Park, which is just in Beaumaris. So that's going to be very close to where they're planning to dump the toxic waste from what they dredge up from the Yarra. So we're really worried about the marine park there at Ricketts Point. We've probably got another few thousand kids booked in to do some programs there over the next few months. So that's going to be a big disappointment if that's all that needs to be cancelled and there's no further education from that perspective.
So what does cyanide do?
Cyanide kills people and it kills marine life, and that's the problem. We're creating one of the biggest toxic dump sites Victoria has ever seen, right in the middle of the bay and in contact with the food chain. It's absolutely criminal. I cannot believe that it's happening.
It actually recycles our sewage, that bay. It eats all the nitrogen and allows for Melbourne sewage to be recycled. If the bay can no longer do that because of turbidity, that's the end of Werribee Sewage Farm, and that's a huge asset to Melbourne.